Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. This evening we'll continue delving into the latest developments in this region. With us this evening is Dr. Cherif Amir, Professor of Geopolitics at the University of Paris. A pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Let us first start with interference. Turkey seems adamant on antagonizing people in this region. I mean, it's looking for a role, but it seems to be adamant on going forward with a very destructive role, like the latest developments in Syria. When are they going to realize that their dream of rekindling the Ottoman Empire is not going to happen on our land?
I think that the Turks will, and I mean that the Turks, not the Turkish regime, the Turkish people who are under the oppression of this dictatorship there, will realize one day that they have a leader who is wasting their efforts and their money on a dream which will not come true because circumstances changed, and that now the international law is present. It's not at the time of the Ottoman Empire or the colonization era. It's different now. So what Erdogan is doing in Syria now and in Libya is something which is out of context. It's not in the history now. It's something that they should realize, that their leader is wasting all these efforts on a dream for his own sake to be an Ottoman leader. For instance, the last clashes took yesterday between the Syrian army and the Turkish army in the territory of Syria. Imagine that. What took place is that several days ago in Idlib, the Syrian forces, Syrian army, is present on its own ground, and suddenly they found in front of them the Turkish army inside their territory. It's according to the international law and all the international regulations. They have the code of dealing with these hostile forces who have no excuse to be present in their territory. They shot at them. They killed 4 or 5 Turkish officers. What took place is that Turkey retaliated the next day, it was yesterday, and they claimed they killed 40 military men from Syria. Inside all that, I repeat, inside Syria's territory. So, and now Erdogan is not happy. And I don't understand how come you have sent your forces illegally into another nation's territory, and then when they were they paid the price for this invasion, you're very, very angry, and you're claiming your rights to backfire and retaliate. So seems something is very wrong in the minds of the ruling leaders there. I think that the military now in Turkey is being shattered between Syria and then across the Mediterranean in Libya, and in times of some tensions with Iraq. We don't understand what really is going on in their minds. They're not anymore the ruling power in this region.
Yes.
So they're losing men, they're losing money, they're losing reputation. Now that the French are saying openly that Turkey is fueling all the wars in the region and fueling the war in Libya. And then the same basic response of Erdogan is always, I will open the borders, I will let the refugees go. I think that this man has to recalculate the situation, because there are new forces in the region. Egypt, for instance, we are there and we will protect our forces and our sovereignty. So gambling with the game in Libya is a waste of time. Someone has to tell him to stop it. Doing the same thing in Syria. The rules now have changed. The Russians are present, the Americans are present, but they're putting the Turks as a buffer force between both of them.
Yes.
But who's losing lives? I'm speaking to the Turkish people. You're the one you are losing now. So I think that his dreams now are fueled not by nationalist, chauvinist feelings. No, it's by his personal ego that he has to be present, that he has to be fighting on every front.
Yes.
I think that Turkey now has to redefine its position in all these situations. The army, I don't know how they are dealing with this. They are in NATO. He doesn't see that he's been used also as a buffer force. And in addition to all that, he is creating more and more hostile relations with all the neighboring countries.
Yes.
Turkey is being isolated, even with the Gulf states. He's still now, his media is attacking the Emirates, attacking Saudi Arabia, and of course the hostile relationship with Egypt, and his personal obsession of hatred towards Egypt's leader, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Although President al-Sisi never mentioned the name Erdogan, and this is not his way of dealing with things, but Erdogan is still being obsessed of changing things in other countries' affairs. Mm-hmm. I think that he has to realize, and this is the role of the people one day in Turkey, who would say enough oppression. We know that many of the media from your fellow journalists there are in the prisons now in Turkey. The generals from the army who said we would not make any aggression against any country, they were thrown in prison. Professors, academics, students, anyone who is not following the mind of Erdogan is paying a price. And I think that now he's losing forces, men being killed in Syria, his men are being killed in Libya.
Yes.
And one of the nastiest things also that he's using the refugees as a fuel.
A bait.
Of course.
Yes.
He sent yesterday 70 Syrian mercenaries were killed in Libya. He's using the Arabs against each other on Arab territory for his own sake. And 70 of them were being killed by the Libyan forces, the National Libyan Army, who were defending also their territories. He's not getting the message. I don't know. Is he trying to show the world that he's powerful, he's more powerful?
Where is the world in all this? Because the only country that is coming out loud and criticizing his actions, aside from the Arab countries, is France. Where is the rest of the European Union?
They're under the blackmail that he will open the borders and change the equation of demographic equation. He knows that many of the refugees are not really refugees. They are fighters that he have formed. Look, the mentality of these sect of like the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, and even in Iran, is that to have militias working for the leader, or they refuse to have an army because national sentiment is very dangerous for their presence. So he knows that he has Syrian militias that he could send to Europe. He could send them as refugees, and then there will be chaos in France, chaos in all Europe. So I think many of the leaders now, especially in Germany, are very keen not to ignite any conflict with this man. But it will come to term, it will come to an end, because he is also strengthening the West's economic presence in this region. For example, in Egypt, we have worked with our partners in Europe and the United States on the Council, International Council for the gas resources in this region, because we said we have to work with international corporations. So when Turkey comes in and says no one will make any exploration in this region, he's sabotaging all the international accords between Egypt, between Europe, between the United States and Egypt. So his strategy will end at a certain time. So I think that Erdogan is playing the last of his cards, because as you see now, not everyone is really scared like before from Turkey. Now the Syrians they have the guts, the force to shoot on the Turkish forces and kill them.
Yeah.
Even the National Libyan Army has now the force. They do not scared from him. They kill his men. So I think that the message is clear. No one is fearing him now on the ground, and he will pay a price. But the price, I think, it won't be militarily. The price will be the people inside would not support him anymore.
Where is the role of the U.S. in this? Because it is usually very, very quick at threatening with sanctions, for example. How come we don't see that with Turkey, where it is clearly evident, it is really adamant on not respecting sovereignty anywhere?
There is 2 points. The first point is Donald Trump's set of minds, meaning that he says, make America great again. That means that whenever there's an opportunity to make a pressure to gain something, he will make it. And he told Erdogan when the US pastor was held, and he told him, you have to free him, and he didn't. We saw how the lira, the Turkish lira fell, and how the economic situation was very, very destabilized, so he freed the man. And then he told him, lately, he told him, you saw once how I have done it, I can do it again. So America is working according to its own interests. They don't see now the interest on this. The second part is that they know very well that Erdogan is playing the card of Russia, that my friend is in Russia, so if he will lose me, like it happened, for example, for the missiles, the air defense S-400. When he got it, the Americans told him, you won't get your F-35 fighter jets. So he said, okay, I will work with the Russians. So the Americans don't want to lose him very much now. They are trying to play with Russia through the interest. You get your interest and I get mine. Like, for example, now the forces of Turkey are present in Syria between the American and the Russian forces, and they're circulating, and then when they cross the borders also with Syria, they're being shot at. So they are now a game. Turkey is a game between all these factions, all these forces, all these superpowers. So the Americans, they used it before, and they are calculating how they will use Erdogan in some extent as a peacekeeper, let's say it like that, for the American forces in Syria. And at the same time, he knows very well that Russia is, could have Turkey immediately in its own camp. And let's not forget there is Incirlik, which is the military base there. So the Americans do not wish to lose Erdogan totally now. But as Donald Trump told him, if I wish to smash your economy, I will do it.
Libya. Whenever we feel that things will settle, somehow we're shocked to see that we're back to square one again.
Well, let's say that things have changed. Of course, that now the National Libyan Army is very present. He's gaining international reconnaissance, that and the French government now is backing Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar. They were the first to refuse his presence. Now it has changed thanks to the Egyptian diplomacy. I think that everyone knows now very clearly that Qatar and Turkey are fueling this, this conflict. No one used to say it before. Now everyone says it. I think that the West is fed up with Turkey's maneuvers there. But I think that the message also is very clear for Turkey that don't mess with Egypt. Egypt is a superpower, a regional power in this region. You cannot ignore us. We have a strong army. We have our economic interest. The only thing that is sparing Erdogan a heavy price is the military doctrine of Egypt, that we do not aggress any other forces outside our borders. But if he will cross the red line in the Mediterranean, we're very prepared. And I think that there are some skirmishes that took place lately that showed, and the maneuvers also, that showed that Egypt is very aware of his maneuvers. So I think that maybe on the ground things are slowly advancing, but things are now very clear that there is a national Libyan army. General Khalifa Haftar is the official representative. There is only two main powers, which is Turkey and Qatar, who are supporting Sarraj. And I think that the international community are not happy with this. Concerning the arms that being shipped there, Erdogan is very, I don't know how he's doing that, but he's very happy to show to the international media the ships coming in with the carriers, personal carriers to Libya, to the Sarraj mercenaries, because once again we're saying those who are fighting against the Libyan army are not Libyans. This is not a civil war anymore.
Yes.
This is a foreign force, which is Turkey, who is sending mercenaries into the ground. So we're not there is no Libyans fighting Libyans.
Where are the international organizations in this? I mean, the world standing by and watching a country deliberately igniting fire, killing innocent civilians, and destroying a country. I mean, this is going to be a burden economically on the world at large. I mean, we don't want to reach a stage whereby we destroy a country and then think how we're going to fix it together. Where is the United Nations in this? Where is the Arab League in this? I mean, is this not a violation of international law and order?
Well, many experts in this field, and I'm one of them, I'm saying that the United Nations, which was created in 1945, has to be really dramatically changed from the inside. Its mechanism has to change now. It's paralyzed. It's not anymore the United States and the Soviet Union, the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc. Things have changed. What we're witnessing now is a paralyzed international body, and I think it needs to be changed. Now the resolutions against Gaddafi are still abiding now. How come? How come that we are saying that there will be a no-flight zone, and then we find hostile enemies, hostile planes bombarding the national Libyan army, and then the Libyan army, when he fights back, they say, well, there is an ongoing conflict. Something is wrong. It's obviously now that the international community in the body of the UN is paralyzed. There is something very, very dangerous happening now. That we have every time Russia and China, and then the United States and Britain, and then this is Security Council, and then they are always clashing, and afterwards people are paying the price on the ground. I think that the mechanism of the United Nations has to be changed. It has to be changed dramatically, but unfortunately, many are saying it has to be changed through international conflict, meaning world war. We can't afford this. I mean, not in this day and age. I mean, the technology itself is devastating. I mean, we can't afford something like this anymore. Even people are saying, experts are saying, if there will be international conflict, it won't last 2 months because of the dangerous weapons that will be used. Before it was planes and bombarding other countries. Now it's different. It could be settled in a few days. So I think that, but unfortunately, history repeats itself. They said in the 1418 First World War, there was the Versailles Conference, and then everything changed again after the Second World War, and it has to be a Third World War for things which should change. I don't think that this would be a good idea. I think that things should be changed through an international conference, but I don't see that the Americans know and the Russians have the will to do it. So if you're asking about the UN is just watching, unfortunately. Concerning the Arab League, well, the problem is that there are several positions. We have Qatar, and then you have, for example, Algeria, who says we don't interfere in other nations' positions. And then 2 days ago, the government in Morocco, which is from the Muslim Brotherhood there, invited the representative of Sarraj to come to their country.
Yes.
So they're making another step because they are retaliating against Algeria's position. And now Tunisia is saying, well, we will invite again Erdogan. And so there is chaos. It's obvious.
Are we the ones creating the chaos? Because from what you're saying, that we are the ones inviting. I mean, not we as in all of us, but some of us are the ones that are encouraging outside intervention.
There is something that has to be done before uniting the voices, as the Europeans did. It should be an economic union, and it was never done. Why the Europeans are abiding to one regulations? Because they know that money is ruling them, and everyone has to be abiding to the rules of the European Union. This didn't happen between the Arab countries.
We pioneered in the concept of an Arab common market, and others did that, and we still haven't done the concept. Taking into account the political atmosphere in this region, do you think it is doable? Do we have the political will?
No.
To put aside the differences?
Of course not. Of course not. There is, as I said, for example, Morocco and Algeria, two big countries in the Arab world, and there's not being, they are taking positions against each other just to be against each other. Why is this happening? We don't understand. Even in the African Union, they refuse to meet. So I don't understand. Tunisia, for example, when they got their new leader, the first thing he has done, he attacked Egypt's leadership. Why you are doing that? President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi sent his congratulations to the new president, and then the new president answered in a way which is very weird to satisfy some of the people there. So I think that leaders have to unite and say, well, we have to be agreeing, first of all, not to make our differences in the international community. Yes, we have differences. Don't you think that the Europeans, they have, France doesn't have any political differences with Britain, or let's not say Britain because Brexit, with Germany and France and Italy? Of course, all countries have problems between them, but they're not acting like, unfortunately, the Arab world, voicing it in front of the international community, not boycotting each other like that. France and Italy lately had several political diplomatic clashes, but once they are representing Europe, it's Europe. It doesn't change. It's like they're working according to a family. We have our own disputes in the inside, but the outside is different.
Yes.
The Arab countries is not like that. And they're ready to work, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They're working according to this rule. So I think the things have to be changed. The mindset has to change. And then you have the Gulf states also they have their own equation about their own security.
Yes.
We have to respect it. If they feel that they have economic and political and diplomatic interest with the West, it's their choice. But it doesn't mean that we have to be against them. I think that the Arab world have to have its clear mind about how to settle the disputes. The problem is that they thought at a certain time that it's utopia. There will be heaven on earth between all these countries, like the Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union was different. Why not gather and the leaders act as Egypt is doing? Do not make any comment on any country's affairs. We never made a comment about Tunisia's affairs, Algeria's affairs, even in Libya. We are saying we want peace. We're not saying that we are enforcing any forces. We are saying there is a national Libyan army fighting for its sovereignty, and we endorse them. we're working according to ABC international law. So why they're not acting like that? Why these different positions? Why the Moroccans are inviting the Sarraj representative into Morocco now because Algeria took stance defending Libya's national army? It's very weird. It has to change. But I think the problem is that the mindset from generation to the other. We use it as a tradition. And maybe if there will be a common interest, political interest, that not necessarily that I will be following you and you following me, but let's make it a rule that we have respecting, for example, why they do not, in North Africa, listen to Egypt's position as saying, if chaos will rule in Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco will pay a very heavy price. Why they're not listening to that? I think they have to say, well, we have to defend Libya's sovereignty.
Is it they're not listening, or is it that we have outside forces that are creating those subdivisions?
Well, as I said, it's the personal interest of every country working on it. That's why as you said, we're getting to square one. Why every time we're getting to square one? For example, let me give you an example. In the Western world, when a leader changes through elections, usually the diplomatic or the geopolitical study of the situation remains the same, but some positions change. For example, look, from George W. Bush to Barack Obama, then to Donald Trump, everyone said we're against the war in Iraq, and still the American forces are in Iraq.
Yes.
Everyone said we're not, Obama said, I won't interfere in any foreign conflicts. Well, he interfered in Syria, destroyed Libya.
Yes.
And now the Americans are present there.
Yes.
So it seems they have the same plan. It won't change from a leader to another. But in the Arab world, it changes. For example, Tunisia, they had the late President Sibsi, who was defending Libya's sovereignty and saying we have to fight terrorism. And then suddenly he died, and then there were elections, and a new leader came, and then was Mr. Qais, and then things changed, and then he received Erdogan, and we don't understand what happened in Tunisia's diplomatic mindset.
It seems that whenever we look at conflicts in this region, one of the causes sometimes of the lack of proper progress is, or the fact that they go out of any constructive path, is the outside party.
Yes.
Yet we see this, for example, in the Palestinian question. And the reason I'm raising this, because maybe it is one of the oldest, or maybe right now it is the oldest conflict in this region. Lots of initiatives to resolve this issue have been proposed since the late 40s. And unfortunately, to date, very little progress has been made, if we can say that there is any progress, so to speak. Can we have any initiative succeeding without the two main parties, and here I'm talking about the Palestinians and the Israelis, compromising and negotiating one-on-one?
Look, as you said from the beginning, there were so many initiatives.
We have the UN lined with resolutions.
Let's not forget Egypt's initiative in the 1970s, when President Sadat offered the Arab world that Egypt will fight for your cause diplomatically. And we invited, at that time, President Sadat met Yasser Arafat, and he said that the Mina House hotel that will be the meeting was Begin, and then things will be discussed in the name of the Palestinians, and we will be present. And at that time, They said Sadat is a traitor.
It was the missed opportunity, as a lot of analysts are saying,
And
or
now,
realizing now
of
out
course,
loud.
and now, after all these years in Oslo, the same terms that Sadat offered the Palestinians, and let's not forget at that time, Egypt was very, the West and Israel were very eager to listen to Egypt because it means that it will be an oxygen for them, because Egypt was a burden in the conflict.
First peace treaty as well.
Of course.
It was their foot in the door.
So anything Sadat would have put on the papers
Yes.
for the question of the Palestinians would have been accepted. And now in Oslo, it was the same terms that Arafat accepted. So it means that something is wrong again with how the Palestinians are treating every initiative. The problem is that the Israelis understood now the mindset of the Palestinians and how to maneuver with them in the square of initiatives. But the problem also is that everyone said lasting peace, and then everyone is proposing something different. The Arab initiative of King Abdullah is different than the initiative of President Sadat in the 70s, the initiative of the US, Obama made one of them, and then the US initiative now. It's different. So which one? In addition to all that, is the problem between Hamas and Fatah. Hamas is accusing Fatah, if you will make any move to negotiate, you're a traitor. Well, I think that the Hamas is negotiating also ceasefire with Israel. So why is this internal conflict? Once again, it's Egypt who can make the change if they will listen. Because
Egypt has tried numerously. I mean, bridging the gap between Hamas and Fatah was extensive. I mean, whenever you take a step forward, somehow Hamas has to come out and just move in another direction to make sure that the step forward is not completed.
And here we get to the point that you have just raised, is the third party. Because inside Hamas, when they say, okay, we will try to work with Abu Mazen, and then you have the Jihad Islami launching rockets. The Jihad Islami was fueled by Iran. And then Hamas, when it tries to listen to Egypt, Erdogan makes a pressure. Qatar makes a pressure. I think that the rule is clear. The regional power in this case of the Palestinian conflict is not Turkey, it's not Qatar, it's not Iran, it's Egypt. So they have to listen to Egypt. I think the message has to be clear for them.
President Mahmoud Abbas just met with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Do you think that he will listen? Because at the end of the day, it's in Egypt's interest that this conflict is put to rest and that Palestine is back on its feet.
I will tell you the truth. From what I have seen since the last initiative, there is something very troubling inside the Palestinian house. Abu Mazen said that he's not willing to accept the initiative before meeting President Sisi. Egypt is always diplomatically on the same level. We're saying, let's negotiate, study the initiative. Turkey, for example, said that the Palestinians refuse it. Well, Turkey is...
Well, as far as Turkey is concerned, the more tension, the merrier. I mean, it gives it an opportunity to continue meddling.
Exactly. So they have the choice. I think that when he met with President Sisi, the statements calmed down in the Palestinian Authority. Let's study. Because when you study an initiative, it's like in trade. There is a price, and then you
start to negotiate.
Negotiate the price, of course. Look, for example, when President Sadat started the Camp David Accords, the first thing he negotiated with the Israelis, he said, give me Jerusalem. And the Israelis said, no, the Palestinians should come and negotiate for Jerusalem. And he said, okay, let's start about the West Bank. They said, no. And then it came to Sinai. And then when we gained Sinai, we said, okay, let's let's move again to the, tactics. This is the problem that I'm trying, I think that Egypt also is advising the Palestinians to do it. Follow the negotiating tactics.
Do we have a negotiating partner? Do you think now Israel, the US has put some pressure on Israel to sit to the negotiating table? Is this what's happening?
I think that Benjamin Netanyahu sees very clearly that there is a chaos inside the Palestinian. If it was Yasser Arafat at a certain time, maybe he had one word ruling everyone, but he understands that there is chaos. So he's now showing to the world that, okay, I'm open for any initiative. Jerusalem is mine. I think that that's why Egypt is very, very clear in its stance. Let's study. Let's not say no or yes immediately. Let's study. Let's talk about it. So I think that we have to, it's very interesting, study the tactics of negotiations. It's an art. There are science of negotiations. And I think that Egypt, since Sadat's time, had this skill.
Is the ground fertile for negotiations? You think that if President Mahmoud Abbas sits with Netanyahu, they can negotiate further?
I will tell you immediately, yes. You know why? Because Egypt is very strong now. And Egypt, if it can, if the Palestinians will ask that Egypt will be present in a negotiation, it will be an excellent opportunity. Because President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, he knows very well how to deal with this critical conflict. And he knows very well who is fueling this conflict. And he knows very well that the Israelis would not like to see internal problems in the West Bank, as we're seeing now, riots, because Israel is focused on Hezbollah and Iran. So this is an opportunity to tell the Israelis, well, the burden is very heavy. Let's negotiate. We have done in Camp David. The Israelis said, we cannot afford war with Egypt. Let's talk with Egypt. We'll do anything to talk with Sadat and Egypt. And they have done it. So I think now, if the Palestinians will say, okay, we're ready, but let Egypt be present, of course we'll play our role. And Egypt is strong now, militarily and diplomatically. And I think that we are the only country in this region, thank God, that has credibility in the eyes of the EU. We're not making any blackmail. We have excellent relations with all the EU members. Remember in 2013, Egypt was isolated, and they had this bait that they said Egypt won't last long after its revolution and it will be destroyed because it's isolated. Now we are the spokesperson of the African Union, the Arab world, even in the Mediterranean. And I think that we have a voice. So why neglect this opportunity? So I think that the Palestinians have to ask for Egypt to take their defense now. And I think it will be an excellent move, and it will be very, very accepted also by the Israelis, because the Israelis, they understand that if Egypt gets angry in this region, things will be very, very bad.
Well, let us hope 40 plus years from now we will not say again a missed opportunity, at least for the sake of innocent civilians that are losing lives every day. Dr. Cherif Amir, thank you very much for joining us, and hope to see you again soon on To The Point. I'd like to thank you, the viewers, wish you a very pleasant evening and good night.